They had nothing down in the middle.
How are you? Should be a long one.
Sorry, it's having
Did you lock the dog park? What people using?
Yeah, they were.
I figured.
Yeah.
I saw the message. I said that can only mean one thing.
And the guy I heard was using it.
Hello.
He didn't tell me.
I figured that was the case. People just said, "Oh."
I came back.
You came back. You're a fool.
Pay no attention back to nobody's here. There's no signage.
And then you had to physically move a piece
Yes.
of fencing to the
Yeah, but that's okay.
then you started giving them their lip service. Well, you don't have any gas, so this was
Week Wednesday. Week from Wednesday. Yeah.
Like after he gives them home the bags, he tries to sell them the
These are for tonight.
Huh?
Those are for tonight.
mentality we're dealing
Tonight?
with.
I love my pen.
I told her I'd try paper.
You guys all set? All set? You all set?
Yeah.
I think so. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the November 2nd meeting of the Chelmsford Board of Selectmen. Will you all please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. This meeting is being recorded and televised by Chelmsford Telemedia. Is anyone else recording this meeting this evening? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to public service announcements. First, we have Regina Jackson, the town's Veterans Agent, to announce Veterans Day events on November 11th at Veteran Memorial Park. Good evening, Regina.
Good evening, everybody. Veterans Day this year is on a Wednesday, so it is Wednesday, November 11th at 11 a.m. at Chelmsford Veterans Memorial Park, which is on North Road beside McCarthy Middle School and the School Administration Building. We're going to have our observance starting right at 11. Everybody's welcome, rain or shine. It's going to be a beautiful day. There's no school that day, and it's in the middle of the week, so we should have a pretty good turnout. Again, everybody's welcome to come. We have, our guest speaker this year is Captain Megan Curran from Chelmsford, a wonderful, wonderful young woman. And also we'll have a couple other speakers. Representative Golden will be there, and we'll have some other speakers and some other dignitaries. And we'd like everybody to come if you're available. And again, it's Wednesday, November 11th, a week from Wednesday at 11 a.m.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much, Regina.
Thank you.
Questions? Oh, do we have a...
Do we have a proclamation?
You got the park.
Or were you going to read it?
Okay.
You just...
Town of Chelmsford Proclamation, Veterans Day, Wednesday, November 11th, 2015. Whereas November 11th was the day on which the armistice ending World War I was signed, and whereas this day has been set aside to commemorate the men and women of the United States who have honorably served our nation in the armed forces, and whereas on Veterans Day 2015, we offer our support to those veterans who suffer illnesses and disabilities resulting from their service, and whereas there are approximately 4,000 veterans living in the town of Chelmsford. Now, therefore, we, the Chelmsford Board of Selectmen, do hereby recognize Wednesday, November 11th, 2015, as Veterans Day, and on this day urges the residents of Chelmsford to remember the personal contributions of all veterans in their community and nation, and to demonstrate their respect and gratitude in appropriate ways. Signed this 11th day of November 2015, Matt Hanson, Robert P. Joyce, Laura Merrill, George Dixon, and Janet Askenberg, sealed by the town clerk, Honorina Maloney.
Good job, Captain.
next under public service announcements, we're very excited to have Fran McDougal and Kathy O'Brien here to recognize the farmers market volunteers. You know, we all love the farmers market, and it couldn't be done without a number of student volunteers. So we really appreciate you coming in to recognize them today.
We have 14 in total, but that, like most teenagers this time, but they're busy, but we will announce all their names, but we'd like first to call up the 3 that are here, and that is Davis and Tyler, Kenny,
Parents.
with their parents, yes,
Right.
and Chris Lewis.
Congratulations. Does anyone?
These are your certificates of appreciation from the town of Chelmsford and from
Like, take a photo.
the farmer's market. And these are copies of the letters that went to Mrs. Dulamis for your National Honor Society thing, if you need it or if you don't. That's up to you and Mrs. Dulamis. So we want to thank you, because you know what? We can't do it without you.
Great.
And we're all going to miss you. And
You guys.
the older we get,
Do you want to look up here for a photo? We can post this online if you'd like.
please.
All right. And smile. All right, very good. And I'm sorry, what were your 3 names again, gentlemen? I'll make sure
Go
I
ahead.
can.
Davis Leitch
Slage.
Tyler Kenny.
and Chris Lewis.
All right, thank you again so much.
And we'd like, sure, I'm sorry, go ahead. And we'd like to announce the other students that would have been here, is Mitchell Smith, Jim Connolly, Mitchell McCabe, Tyler, Thomas Doherty, Catherine Thomas. She was brave. Blake, you'll notice all the other names. Blake
Because she lives
Albert,
next door to me.
Thomas Marshall, Ryan Johnson, Joseph Connell, and Sam Gouvain. So they will all receive the same things, they just can't be here this evening. And before I forget, they're wonderful, and we couldn't do it without them, but we also couldn't do it without the town. And we have a special thank you for Chief Spinney, because he sent down these wonderful officers to help with the crossing. It was wonderful for the kids, it was just terrific. Paul, of course, shows up, and we insist he buys vegetables, so he comes. And this year we had Claire Barrett, who is our friend from across the pond, who was wonderful with us. She brought us into the 21st century with.
She did all our PR. She did
All
a
our
lot of the
PR.
work on, I tried to do most of the work on Facebook and on our site. But she came in with that wonderful British humor and.
Webpage, Instagram, and Twitter.
All right.
Don't use any of them myself,
She tweeted
but.
a lot. No,
And she
tweeted
came
a
every
lot.
week and took pictures. And of course, the clerk's office is tremendously helpful, because they put a big poster outside. If it's Thursday, it's on the common. So needless to say, Fran and I
And the health
could not do it.
department also.
And the health department, everybody is so supportive and so helpful. We couldn't do it without you. I mean, it's just not possible, so
And
thank
it's
you.
also someone called Ed O'Brien, who
Yeah.
happens to be the spouse
He-
of this lady here.
Yeah, well, he comes and sets it up, because I'm not allowed to, and
I'm
Fran
not
isn't
either.
either, so. When I say I do it, it really means we do it.
Good. It's a partnership.
And thank you all for your support. It's
Thank you
been
so much.
wonderful.
Thank you.
So we can expect you back
There's a
next
lot
year?
to like about Chelmsford.
I said to my husband when I left, he said, if they ask you if you're coming back next year, what are you gonna say? I said, what do you think? He said, all right, Kath.
All right, very good.
Yes.
Thank you again. Much appreciated. Fantastic. We'll now move on to agenda item number 3, which is open session. Is there anyone here this evening who wishes to address the board? Okay.
Is this where I ask for a permit?
No.
No?
That's probably under licenses.
So if you had something on the agenda, it may be a little later on under licenses. Which permit are you here for?
I want to sell Christmas trees.
Okay.
Okay.
That's later on.
Okay.
That's next. So we are under open session if anyone has any other issues they'd like to bring up with the board.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Nick Silvio, 4 Coach Road, Chelmsford. For the folks
Is
that
the
don't.
mic tall enough?
I know. For the folks that don't know me. I know there was some discussions the last couple of months in regards to the turf fields, and some people asked me some questions, and I went and took a look at the fields, and for people that know me, I'm there all the time anyway. One of the concerns that I have, that I see, is the maintenance of the fields. I spoke with Janet. Her and I had a conversation about the length of how long the fields are going to exist. And I think 1, 2, 3, 4 people here at the table were on that committee. Sprint Turf put in our carpet, and Sprint Turf carpets really don't have a life expectancy yet because none of them have failed, because it's a new technology. And I suspect that the technology will probably last 15 to 20 years if you maintain them and they're taken care of. It's a good product. I watched both those fields go in. I was there every morning and every afternoon at the end of the day, and I watched them go in. I learned everything I could about the carpets. I learned everything I could about the installation, the groundwork, everything that was done. And it was a huge investment made by the town and by the taxpayers of Chelmsford. So as you all know, I'm very passionate about the fields, very passionate about, making sure that we get our dollars worth. But one of the things that I noticed, and I went there this week, and I've been on the fields, and I really didn't notice it as much as till Saturday morning when I was out there early. And I'm going to pass a couple of pictures out so everyone can see these. Sure. This is primarily at McCarthy Field. The high school is in much, much better shape. But at McCarthy Field, every 5 yards, you'll see a seam mark. Now, I spoke with someone this weekend on Saturday evening, and those seams happen only for 2 reasons. Reason 1, the person that's grooming the field doesn't know what they're doing, or haven't been trained correctly. Let me restate
So
myself.
the seams were never there?
They were there to start with,
Okay.
but they become more pronounced as the blades get flattened down and don't get groomed back up. So it's any one of 2 things. 1, the person that was trained to do it was not trained correctly, or 2, they're not being groomed. I suspect it's the latter, only because, and the high school is in different shape because I think at the high school it's a lot easier for the equipment to come out of the garage, go right into the field, and it's fine. McCarthy takes effort and takes time to do.
Because you have to get the equipment out of,
Yep, out of the shed that's
the
right
high
there next to
school.
the field.
and how do you get it over from the high school to McCarthy? You just
Well,
have
I
to-
know how they move. I know how they move the cutting equipment. They put it on a flatbed and they haul it over with the back of the pickup truck.
Okay.
But don't forget, this piece of equipment is a gator with a little hauler on the back side, which is the groomer. That can be driven. The gator is literally a 4-wheel tractor. That's all it is. You can drive across grass, it's fine, and you can drive anywhere. So you really don't even have to put it on a trailer. The point that I'm trying to make really more than anything, and I've told this to many people, I mentioned this to Paul, I've mentioned it to Kathleen, I've mentioned it to Gary. I'll find a half dozen people that'll do it. No problem. We'll do it. But this is a major investment. And if we can take the time to maintain it, it'll last 20 years. It will last 20 years. Talk to anybody in any I've been in the business, I've been in operations for 35 years. Maintain stuff, it lasts longer. There's a reason why they maintain billion-dollar oil refineries. And there's also a reason why someone will maintain a $100 gas, lawnmower. They'll last forever if you take care of them. So, and I'm not trying to, the only thing that I'm asking is, we tried our best to try to put the best product in there, okay? We really should take the extra effort to really go in and really maintain them, as part of our plan, we were gonna reduce the amount of effort it was gonna take to take care of the fields. And I think that's been done, because, there's no need for guys to be out there twice, 3 times, a month mowing. They don't have to do that. But you still, as part of our plan, also stated that you had to put some time in based upon the amount of hours that are being used. Those fields are being used. And they are being used a lot. They really are, which is great. I love driving by there, seeing the lights on, the kids out there playing soccer or football or field hockey or whatever. It's a great thing to watch. But we got to take care of them. We really, really do. And those pictures are what they are. I didn't, anyone can walk out to take a look at them. Every 5 yards, right in between the 5-yard markers, the seams. You go to the edge right near the track, You'll see the seams all the way down the entire length of
But
the track.
that's just the McCarthy.
That's just McCarthy. The high school field is in a little better shape. But it still needs to be groomed. It really does. And I would appreciate if the committee would look into it. I think part of the problem is the school department owns the property, owns the buildings, owns the field. Absolutely correct, and I understand that. Believe me, I've been there. Okay? But the maintenance department reports to the town, and it's the town's responsibility to get those teams out there to do that work. I think it's that responsibility. You know, so it becomes like I don't want this to happen. Maybe the school committee says, well, I don't want to put in whatever, and, take a look. I have better things to do, or, I don't have the maintenance department reporting to me, and I can only put in the request, and so on and so forth. But I also don't want it to turn into 10 years from now, oh, you guys selected the wrong kind of field. No, we didn't. We did not. So I just asked if you would just look into it and see if there's anything that we can do to put in a better program to make this work. Listen, I put in numerous hours in town doing whatever I have to do. If you came to me and said, Nick, can you put in 5 hours a month to groom the fields? First person to raise my hand, I'm there to do it. I'm welcome to do it. I'd be more than happy to do it.
Right.
More than happy.
Well, I mean, I think we'll definitely look into that. And
We'll schedule it on the agenda for the next meeting. We'll have Gary Persichetti come in, we'll have Kathleen Canavan, we'll notify Scotty Moreau,
Yeah.
Nick can be present. We keep a log of the maintenance on those fields. As you know, there's a log kept, and we can match that log with the information, as Nick pointed out. The fields are scheduled by the athletic director.
right.
And in fact, we had discussions with this with Dr. Lang and members of the school committee about a few weeks ago about making sure that that's in sync. And so we'll do that because I don't want to leave any misimpressions publicly, and so I think that's the best way to do it.
And maybe whatever's being done, just
Yeah, have them
something
come
needs
out
to be
and listen,
changed.
right.
So-
I'm not trying
Kathleen's
to,
here.
I'm
Yeah,
not
Kathleen
trying
is here.
to place blame anywhere or point fingers or anything, but I'm just gonna tell you from everything, I took the effort to learn about the product, to learn about the installation, to learn about how it needs to be taken care of. George knows, every time he showed up at the field, I was there working, on my time. So, and I don't think anyone knows more about that sprint turf in this town than I do, okay? And I'm telling you, that field is not being groomed. It's just not being groomed. Or the person that was trained to do it was not trained correctly.
Well, we can look into that. I know we don't usually have a debate here.
No, and
Kathleen
I'm not
does
trying
look
to
like
turn this into
no,
a
I know.
debate.
I definitely want to get back to you though, and we can report on what is being done and maybe what could be changed.
Can I just ask a question, though?
Sure.
So that when he come back, I don't recall a town meeting having someone say that the facilities department was going to maintain it.
Sure, we maintain all the
To
facilities,
maintain all the fields.
all the fields.
They're the maintenance
Okay.
department.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even the ballparks for the
Yeah.
high school
Yeah.
and all that.
Who else can do it?
I mean, that was definitely part of the
Yeah,
plan.
that's
and-
part of
yeah.
the plan.
So the only thing we subbed out was custodians.
Yeah, but that's the school, that's a school function, that's not
yeah,
a town
but-
function.
Yeah, that was. A
And
little
they
different.
don't handle that.
That's not maintenance. That's-
Kathleen's here. Maybe she can give us a little guidance before our next meeting on maybe what we can expect or to look
Because
into.
I'm here, I'd like to respond. Nick, I'd just like to thank you for your interest in the fields and your collaboration. I think to be interested in the community property is utmost important, and we want those fields in good shapes for the students to play, bottom line. I'm the facilities manager, so I'm responsible for the operation and maintenance of the fields. And something I'd like to bring to everyone's attention is McCarthy, since the fields have really started to see greater use this summer, we've had to groom the fields every 60 hours. So I'm the one who actually quantifies it. We get the data from Scott. So football, 1 hour of football time is 3 hours of grooming time. So the harder you play on the field, the more hours it's calculated. So since August, my staff has been out there every 2 weeks grooming the fields. And McCarthy is definitely the harder used field, just gets greater use. Some of the soccer organizations at night, and we've been working with Sprint Turf not only to repair, sew, and glue down some of the minor repairs, but also we asked them the same question about the seams a few weeks ago. So I watch these fields, I see them, And what the gentleman from Sprint Turf did is he bent down, picked it up, and said, these are the seams, these are the way they're constructed, because it's a monofilament type of turf. So they were understitched together. So we went
Right.
through in a few places.
But the monofilament stitch that's done at the McCarthy Field
Yeah.
is exactly the same stitch that's done at the high school.
So.
No seams at all. But the blades of the grass all stand up properly. So there's something either with equipment setting, like I said, it could be as simple as training or lack thereof.
Well, and you have no recreational use by the community at the high school because it's locked up, whereas
But it's
any
used.
resident can go and kids will go when it's
Yeah.
not used at McCarthy. So I think it's a
Right.
little,
Yeah,
different
you're
there.
right, but the high school
Maybe a
gets
little rougher,
lot of use.
too.
Right. I don't,
It does. So, we can take this offline.
yeah. I
You're
think
welcome to
that's the
come
best
join
thing to
us
do.
at our next committee and at our next walkthrough. But I just had wanted to respond to some of your concerns, because that's something we're seeing as well. And the same gentleman maintained both fields. So we'll
Yeah,
take this offline.
I appreciate it. If
Thank
you could
you.
do
Thank you.
that.
Thank you.
We'll
Thanks.
talk
Here
about
for-
getting it on the next.
Thank you.
Thank you. We're still in open session. Is there anyone else who wishes to address the board this evening? Seeing no one, we will move on to committee vacancies. Selectman Joyce, would you like to read those for us?
Sure will. 4?
Yes.
Okay, committee vacancies as of 11/2/2015. Community Preservation Fund Committee has 1 3-year term. Great Brook Farm Advisory Committee has 1 1-year term. Land Management Subcommittee has 1 2-year term. Public Celebrations Committee has 2 1-year terms. Recycling Committee has 3 1-year terms. Tree Committee has 1 3-year term ending, well, no, we don't have to have the ending. If you would like to be considered, there is on the website, www.townofchelmsford.us, an application you could fill out and send it to tmoffice@townofchelmsford.us.
seems like we have a lot less vacancies.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, that is good. We're getting there. All right. We will move on to agenda item number 5, licenses. We have a number of one-day licenses and special licenses.
Want to do them all at once?
Yeah, I'm certainly happy
Because
doing the licenses.
there's some uniqueness to a couple of them, like the Brick House.
Yeah, that's their Thanksgiving event
Yeah.
again this year.
So, we can do them all at once, or we can pull out the ones that aren't.
I mean, maybe we should do the licenses together and then the roadside vendors together, because a few of the roadside vendors are here.
Okay.
And I know we do have someone from the Brick House as well, if anyone has any questions.
So we have, let's see, special license to sell wine at an agricultural event.
Mhm.
1-day beer and wine at the Center Brick House Pizza. 1-day beer and wine for CCA. Another one for 11/15 for CCA. Another beer and wine for 12/5 for CCA, beer and wine. 1-day beer and wine for St. Vincent's. And we'll stop there.
Does anyone have any questions on any of those applications? I can ask if the applicants are here.
I move we approve all of them. The ones I've read.
Okay,
Okay.
as presented. Is there a second?
second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nays or abstentions? Okay, licenses are approved unanimously.
Okay, I'll do roadside vendor now. Elmo's
At a time.
Flower and Garcian Center from 1/27 to, 11/27,
He's not going to be here.
2015 to 12/23, 55 Graniteville Road.
Mhm.
Is the party here for that?
Oh, you are here, sir? Oh, great. Please come on.
Hi, good evening. My name's Richard Guile. I'm here for Almo's Garden Center, requesting a roadside vendor's license to sell Christmas trees, wreaths, and kissing balls from the date you just stated.
You've been doing this the last few years, is that correct?
Pardon me?
You've been doing this the last few years, is that correct?
Yes, we have.
Oh. Any
Okay, a second, yeah.
We'll take these one at a time.
Yeah,
since
we'll
it's
do this
easier.
one at a time. I move we approve the vendor license for Elmo's Flower and Garden Center.
Second?
Any questions or comments? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Nays or abstentions? That was unanimous. I agree.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for coming back again this year.
Roadside vendor Benton Burgess for the 110 baseball fields from 11/24/2015 to 12/23/2015. That part of here?
Benton Burgess, 52nd Lane. We've been up here a couple of times.
Quite a few
It's good to
times.
see everybody again.
Yes, thank you for
We just
coming.
want to run things the same as last year
Mhm.
over at the ball fields, and all the money we raise goes to the Travis Roy Foundation. I think you guys might remember most of that. Just to give you guys some perspective, last year, the Travis Roy Foundation gave out $330,000 in grants to people who have been injured in a spinal cord, who have injured their spinal cord. Over $350,000 has gone to research. The research is starting to prove some great stuff. 4 people last year have had a spinal implant that has returned lost function that they've never had, well, they lost in an injury. This year, they're moving to 10 recipients. So stuff that we're doing here in Chelmsford is benefiting people locally and across the nation, which is great stuff. I just want to mention that the people in Chelmsford are just tremendous. Year after year, the same folks come by for the trees, and we're very grateful for the ability to do what we do. And we thank you guys for being so generous to let us do a roadside vendor. Thank you.
Question, is it in the Little League section or in the girls softball section?
It's the Little League. So it's the parking lot. That's over by the 110 fields.
Okay,
So yeah, we've done it over at the girls softball field before. They had to rebuild the field
Yeah.
last year, so they kicked us out.
I don't know if we'd want to do that this year because.
Oh, no, no, no.
the grass is-
Yeah,
Don't
things are
want to
great
spot.
over at the ball fields. They're a
Okay.
good bunch, so.
Move to approve a roadside vendor for Benton Burgess, 11/24/2015 to 12/23/2015.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Hey, thank you very much.
Thank you for coming in and talking about foundation.
Mr. Pappenfuss, is he here? Oh,
I
okay.
won the Dick Pappenfuss lookalike contest.
All right.
Mr. Pappenfuss had the option of addressing this august body or taking his wife to dinner for their anniversary. And I don't know why he chose to send me instead, but I'm John Smith, and I am from Central Congregational Church, and I seek a license to sell trees and wreaths at the parking lot of the church.
Yeah, as you've done in years past. That's great. Any
Make a
questions?
motion that we approve the roadside vendor license for a Central Congregational Church from 11/28/2015 to 12/23/2015.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It's unanimous. Thank you for coming.
Thank
in
you
this
very
evening.
much.
Good luck.
And then we have one more. Roadside vendor Paul Taylor
So,
Yep.
Right. Very good.
for Chelmsford Elks Lodge.
Yes, actually, this is our 4th year. That's actually Boy Scout Troop 75 from Chelmsford. Our 4th year selling Christmas trees at the Elks Lodge on 300 Littleton Road. We'll be selling from the Saturday after Thanksgiving, which I believe is the 28th this year, through Sunday the 13th, from 10 to 5 on, again, just Saturdays and Sundays.
Okay.
So, and it's, we'll be selling trees and wreaths, similar to what you've heard from our other fellow competitors, but I think we have the best trees.
You must, because you're only asking for a license to the 13th, and the rest of them are asking for the 23rd. Do you sell out?
Yes, we basically, buy a certain amount, and when they're gone, they're gone.
Okay.
And to be honest with you, it's sometimes a challenge to get teenage boys up Saturdays, Sundays, more than 2 or 3 weeks in a row, and they often have campouts that get in the way, so we decided that, let's just try to do it for 2 to 3 weeks, and this is how we've done it for 4 years, and it seems to work.
Great.
So,
Questions?
Yeah, any questions for the applicant? All right, hearing
I
none.
make a motion that we issue the roadside vendor license, Paul Taylor, from 11/28/2015 to 12/13/2015 at 300 Littleton Road.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's unanimous. Good luck.
I also have the fee here.
Oh, please, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay. Move on to public hearings. We have a public hearing for National Grid underground conduit petition for Poplar Lane. Is there anyone here from National Grid?
Yep.
Good evening.
Hi, my name's Dave Aguirre, and I'm representing National Grid. National Grid is asking for permission to install and replace, to install conduit and replace the cable on Popular Lane from pole 29 Princeton Street up to the first transformer, which is pad 1-2. The purpose of this will be to restore, well, not to restore, but to upgrade the power.
Absolutely. Great. Any questions for the applicant before we ask for public comments?
Can I just ask where this street is? I'm not really that familiar with it. What's it near?
It's, as it comes around the corner,
The gas
coming from
station.
like the Glenview,
By the
Yeah.
gas station.
well, the Glenview's up the street, coming down from that way, going towards North Chelmsford.
Gas station that heads,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
there's a little cul-de-sac.
Oh,
Just
okay,
before
yeah,
the
yeah.
gas station.
Right opposite George Zaharoul's house.
Yeah.
maybe?
Right.
Okay, very good,
Huh?
thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Oh, well, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak regarding this petition? Seeing none, I'll make a motion. I'll entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
I make a motion, we close the public hearing on Poplar Lane.
All in favor? Aye. It's unanimous. Any further comments on the petition? Entertain a motion.
Make a motion that we approve the installation of conduit in Poplar Lane as presented
Sure.
on this paperwork.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nays or abstentions? That's unanimous. Great.
Okay, thank
you
you.
very much. Have a good evening. Move on to agenda item number 7, reports and presentations. First, we have John Edward. Is John here this evening?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think he just stepped out.
Maybe just stepped out. He's coming right in? Okay, great. And Evan Malinsky will be next. He's here to discuss the Housing Advisory Board and their update on the production plan.
Yes, I am.
Good evening, sir.
And by the way, congratulations to each and every one of you for being referred to as an august body. I think that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that is.
I am indeed John Edward, and I'm here tonight representing the Housing Advisory Board. We were here last at July of 2014 to ask for your permission and direction to update the affordable housing plan that we currently have. And I'm here to give you an update of what we've been doing in that time frame. And essentially, what we're looking for tonight is direction from you as to how to proceed going forward. And so this is the Housing Advisory Board as currently constituted. And I would also like to mention that in addition to the people that you see who've all made very valuable contributions to our effort, Colleen Stansfield was our planning board representative prior to Monica, so she's another one who's contributed quite a bit to this. And you can't see it on the screen, but down below, Evan Belansky, Community Development Director, not a voting member of the board, but a very valuable resource to everything that we do. Okay, the next slide is basically just a snapshot of where we were back when the Affordable Housing Plan was approved in January 2012. And the numbers I want to highlight are actually the ones down the bottom. The percentage on the shared subsidized housing inventory is 7.2%. The new units required 379, and the 0.5% annual target of 69 units. So 69 is the number that I think most people focus on. That's the number of units that we need to produce on an annual basis to get our safe harbor. But back then, we were at 70.2%. We needed 379 units to get to the full 10%, which is the ultimate goal of Chapter 40B. The next slide has the current numbers as of today. Previously, we were at 7.2%. Now we're at 8.5%. Previously, we needed 379 units. Now we only need 205. And the target hasn't changed and will not change until the 2020 census is complete. So we're actually closer now than we ever have been to full certification, 10%. But the bad news is that we're currently vulnerable to the comprehensive permit process. We did have 2 years of safe harbor, but that safe harbor has expired. And I just want to clarify something because there seems to be a misconception in town that there's a lot of stuff in the pipeline, so to speak, that's coming down the road that will somehow get us to this 10% in the near future. And there's nothing actually in the pipeline right now. There are projects that some people have talked about, but there's nothing actually in the pipeline right now. So we're close, but we still got a lot of work to do. Okay, we talked about this last time we were here, back in July of 2014. But what we're really trying to do in the Housing Advisory Board is be proactive. And now I think there's even more of an urgency to do that because the current Affordable Housing Plan expires in January of 2017. It has a 5-year window. And I'm not sure that everyone's aware of this, but to actually gain Safe Harbor certification, you need to have an approved housing production plan. So we're thinking if we can update the plan now and negotiate with Department of Housing and Community Development to get them to approve the update, we can get some type of extension. But even beyond that, by doing this, we're showing the Department of Housing and Community Development, and if it comes to the Housing Appeals Committee, that the town is conducting continuing planning and that we're being proactive in terms of trying to meet the goals of Chapter 40B. Okay, in terms of what we've been doing with the update, certain parts of the plan we are updating as necessary. Housing market is certainly better than it was back in 2011. We were still kind of in the Great Recession at that point. Things have gotten better. Whatever needs were unmet back in 2011 are essentially still unmet. There's still a significant need for affordable housing in Chelmsford. And the barriers that existed back then, to a certain extent, a large extent really, still exist today. But we will reflect on those. We will certainly be, I'll say, taking credit for the progress the town has made over the past few years. The town has made some significant progress on plan production. We just saw the numbers. We've also had some success with respect to zoning, both overlay zoning and now more recently inclusionary housing bylaw. And the town has been ponying up money with the community preservation funds. And now we have a system in place for collecting payment in lieu of on the inclusionary housing bylaw, but there's also actually a pending development where the Chelmsford Housing Authority is receiving some payment in lieu of instead of producing affordable units. We will be removing 3 sites from the priority list that was in the 2011 plan. Those 3 sites are Oak Hill, 1620 Boston Road, the old Stop and Shop site, and 2428 Boston Road, which is another property that's been developed otherwise than housing. So those have all been eliminated from the priority site list. They're no longer viable at all, but we have identified some new opportunities. Okay, what is not being updated in the plan, really no reason to update it. I think most people, when they think of our affordable housing plan and when they think about this issue in general, they think about Chapter 40B and the comprehensive permit process. But there's really a lot more to our plan and to the strategy or the menu of strategies that we provide to the town. There's actually 26 different strategies documented in the affordable housing plan, some of which we've actually, again, made progress on, in particular regulatory strategies. But also we're trying to do some work with respect to preservation and production strategies don't just include the comprehensive permit process, doesn't just include developing on private property. If there are publicly owned properties that are available and reasonable, then we certainly advocate going down that route as well. In terms of the new opportunities, the new priority sites that we've identified, they are listed here. And essentially, we have a set of 10 criterion that we use for evaluating properties. But essentially, to make it onto this list, there are really 2 things that are required. One, the property has to be identified as something that's viable in the next 5 years. It has to fit into the 5-year window where we think there's actually reason to believe that affordable housing units could be developed at these sites in the next 5 years. And some of that comes from just general knowledge of the community. Some of it comes from being approached by property owners. And the other requirement is that they have to provide a significant number of affordable units. We weren't really interested in doing one-offs where we could say, oh, we could do one affordable housing unit here, we could do one here. We have to do 205. So to make it to the priority site list, they have to have some meaningful impact. Also want to note that by putting a property on the priority site list, that does not mean at all that then that site will absolutely positively be approved for affordable housing. It'll still have to go through the comprehensive permit process. The Zoning Board of Appeals will conduct their hearings. They could deny a comprehensive permit even if it shows up on the priority list. Certainly the fact that it's on the priority list would be an influence as far as the Department of Housing and Community Development and the Housing Appeals Committee is concerned. But if the town finds reason to believe that this property is just inappropriate, then this doesn't mean that it gets a free pass. Okay, one of the sites that was listed on the priority site list was the 255 Princeton Street property, which is the old UMass Lowell West Campus is what we used to call it. I'm not really sure if it belongs on the priority site list. We list it again as being one for future potential. It's clearly a site that's been talked about in town for a long time. It would be a really great opportunity for some type of mixed-use development. It's a large property, but we're just not really sure it's viable. I mean, we don't own it. The state owns it. There's no real clear reason to believe that they're going to be willing to relinquish it anytime soon. Last I heard, they had a deed restriction for educational purposes. I don't know what the latest on that is. But even if it was available to the town, they're not going to give it to us. We're going to have to pay for it. So where's the money going to come from? But we have identified the UMass Lowell property and the DPW site on Princeton as being, having some future potential. The DPW site on Princeton has a lot of contending forces who would have ideas for what to do with that property.
I think that's Richardson Road, John.
DPW site, yes, you're right. Thank you, George. Yeah.
I was trying to figure out where that
Where
was.
is that DPW site in Princeton? It moved to Richardson, but
There you
yeah,
go.
thank you.
I was thinking the state DPW.
That's one of the things, we would look for guidance on whether or not that's actually something that's viable in the next 5 years. And then in general, again, I want to stress that the 2011 plan and the 2005 plan before that identified producing units on publicly owned sites as a strategy. But the question is where and with what money? On the most recent endeavor with respect to this, we were presented with a list of 170 properties that are actually under your control, under the control of the Board of Selectmen, except that we're talking about properties that are wetlands. We're talking about properties that are very, very small, maybe suitable for a doghouse or something like that. We're talking about playgrounds. We're talking about areas that are just either unbuildable completely or just not appropriate. And so it's continuing effort to try to find places where we can put affordable housing. But the publicly owned property approach, it certainly has merit, but right now doesn't seem to have viability. Okay, so in terms of the process, again, we were here last July to get your approval to proceed with this. We have been holding monthly meetings of the Housing Advisory Board, sometimes even more frequently than that. However, I do have to say that last winter, things were a little bit different. I had a tough winter, and we didn't actually meet for a while last winter. We have posted a couple of drafts of our update on the town website so that we could get some public input, and we did have a public input session in June. And then we had another one in September specifically to respond to the input that we received in June. I believe you have the presentation we gave in September as part of your packet, and I'll be more than willing to respond to any questions you might have about that presentation. But we responded to the input that we received from the public, and now we're back before you again, looking for your direction before we proceed any further. Proceeding further would be certainly giving presentations to other boards in town, but also looking for an advisory opinion from the Department of Housing and Community Development. Much as we did with the original 2011 plan, we gave them an early draft of the 2011 plan and basically just said, does this look okay to you? And they came back to us and said, it looks good, but here's a couple of things you need to add. And so we would do the same kind of thing here, except it would be more of, well, what can we do with this? What would you do with this? Would it get us a new 5-year window? What else would we need to do to get that new 5-year window, to get essentially a new plan in place? And so we're looking for direction from you as to whether or not we should continue on the path we're on right now, whether or not we should abandon this path and take a different route, or whether or not we should just abandon the effort altogether. And then 2 final slides, just as motivation. We really do need to do something about this, because we are now in a period where we don't have safe harbor, so we're vulnerable to the comprehensive permit process. Developers can come in and propose 40B projects, and we really don't have much say in what happens. So we need to have an updated housing production plan by January of 2017. And by updating this plan and again, in some sense, taking credit for the progress that we have made, it gives us more leverage with the Department of Housing and Community Development and the Housing Appeals Committee. And then finally, we still have, the unmet needs still have not been met. We have an affordable housing crisis in Chelmsford. A lot of people, both renters and owners, but more specifically renters, are living in unaffordable conditions or extremely unaffordable conditions. And this is also a general concern for anyone who cares about the economy in this area of the state. Most recent data point on that, the Massachusetts High-Tech Council has a dashboard where they compare the state of Massachusetts, to other states around the country. And I know people have used that organization to argue, for example, for tax breaks. And actually on the tax business climate, we rank right about in the middle. Yeah. On the criteria of difficulty in hiring, we're last in the country. And a lot of that is because it's very difficult for people to find places to live. They get offers from companies in this area, and in many cases they end up declining them because they can't find a place that they can afford to live. So lots of reasons why we should be, concerned about this issue and trying to be proactive about it. Right. So thank you for your time, and that concludes my presentation, but I'm here to answer any questions you might have.
Yeah, absolutely great. Thank you for the update so far. Bob, if you have a question.
You said we have nothing in the pipeline, but what
Right.
about Mill Road?
Well, Mill Road has already been approved. It's already shows up in the subsidized housing inventory. So yeah, I mean, if you think about it in the pipeline in terms of different stages of development, yeah, but it's already in. What I was referring to is in terms of adding units to the subsidized housing inventory, those are already counted. There's nothing new coming that we know of.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's counted in our goal.
The progress from 379 units to 205 units reflects the 108 units at Mill Road.
Okay. I also noticed that new opportunities, you have 311 Littleton Road. Isn't that being built right now?
Is it?
Yeah, it is, right? Because I know 313 is where the Chinese restaurant is, so.
Yeah, that's Hillside, that's the one that's going out for,
That's not included in our inventory currently.
that'd be 8 units?
That's why it's
Is there
listed as
8
a
units?
possibility.
That's all home ownership there.
That's home
Is it
ownership.
about 8 units, Evan? Does that sound correct?
Condos, but it's all.
11
11.
affordable, okay.
But it's not in the subsidized housing inventory now, so it's kind of like, well, we're anticipating this happening, so we might as well list it as a priority site.
So we'll have that. Now, what about River Neck Road? I seem to recall there was a complex up there where it was a farm, McKennedy Farm. Does any of that count? No?
No. That was the one that did the payment in lieu of for 2 affordable units to the Chelmsford Housing Authority.
Well, the payment in lieu doesn't go to the housing authority. It goes to the town.
No, that payment in lieu does go to the Housing Authority. That one does.
Oh.
That was not done as part of a zoning bylaw or inclusionary housing or anything like that.
Okay.
At that time, we didn't have an affordable housing trust fund either, so.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. We just did it at town meeting.
Yeah.
Now, are these all where it says new opportunities, priority sites, are there more than this?
No, there would be the 11 remaining from the original plan.
That's not in here, right?
That's not in this presentation. They're in the original plan. And then, yeah, this is the entire list of the new priority sites that we're proposing.
Okay.
No other ones.
Just my opinion, but I think we should keep the UMass Low property in there. I
Okay.
mean, because what's to say the state might turn around or the ULOL might turn around and say, oh, yeah, we're going to get rid of it, and we're not in line, We can say, hey, we've been looking at this for 10 years.
There's a deed restriction on that property that I believe the state just exercised a renewal on.
Oh, is that right?
And in fact, the abutting condominium association is a named party of interest in that as well.
Oh,
And they certainly don't.
And they're not going to.
They're not looking for any development at all over there.
okay.
But that doesn't mean they can't get it, but.
See, anything else? No, I think that's it for me right now.
Did anyone else have any other questions for John? I mean, I just had, did you have a question?
Just quick, while we were still on that slide,
Oh, sure.
the one on Dunstable, it says off.
Yes.
What is that?
That's how it's listed in the graphical information system. It's actually a piece of property that we kind of stumbled on. It's not even accessible through Chelmsford. You have to go through Lowell to get to it. But it's really interesting because it's right next to an existing, what I would refer to as an affordable housing project that's in Lowell on the budding piece of property that's on the Chelmsford side of the border, and both properties appear to be owned by the same company. So.
Dunstable Road doesn't go to Lowell.
At some point they may.
Must be Tingsboro. Is it Tingsboro or
No.
Dunstable Road doesn't go to,
That's-
doesn't touch
oh.
Lowell, I don't think.
No, but that's how it's, I'm just saying, that's how it's listed. It's, the Woodland Park is the name of the development in Lowell. And how this piece of property, which is, as far as Chelmsford's concerned, is landlocked, but you could get through it through the property in Lowell, is just listed as Dunstable Road off. That's how it's listed in the graphical
There's
information
no street
system.
address.
I didn't make that up.
The streets.
Very good. Well, I mean, I know you were looking for a little bit of guidance as far as what to do with the plan and if you should keep moving forward with it. And I mean, if the town has found benefit from our last plan and you think that we can still find use in the plan moving forward, I think it's better for us to have this than to not have it. Evan may get more, questions fielded to his office. We, could ask him about it. But I think to have a plan in place if developers are looking for opportunities, it's better than, it's just better than not having that available to them. And there are a lot of things to consider here, such as what to do with the pilot funds and the best way to generate new units moving forward. So there's a lot to think about, and it's not, as you said, just a plan about telling us how many units we need to get to 10%. It's looking at different ways to get there and what's in the best interest. How can we do that? Can we use town-owned properties and other partnerships? And we are going to have to, as pilot funds come in through different sources, we're going to want to keep looking at ways that the town is going to have probably more active hand to play as far as the development of affordable housing as we get more money in that account. So I, just really appreciate your efforts, and I think it is an important document to have. So.
I have one more question, if I could.
Yes.
This one's for Paul. Paul, notwithstanding the the dog park, how many acres is available there if we wanted to make that one?
I mean, the DPW acreage is there. The problem is you got to relocate the DPW to free up the acreage.
Well, we know that's going to happen.
We do? I must have missed that town meeting.
Is that on the agenda?
Persistence. But is there, if the DPW weren't there, would there be 3, 4, 5, 6 acres?
Well, it's more than that. Yeah.
More than that?
Yeah.
So that's a potential site,
Yeah.
Be good to leave that on.
provided we get the
Right.
DPW.
But the difficulty with that site is it's the only piece of town general use land that the town has in ownership. That's not conservation land, that's not school land, that's not anyway
Wetlands.
encumbered, not
Plus,
wetlands.
we have the North Chelmsford Water District
Right across the
has
street.
4 wells there, right?
Across the way.
So that would be certainly a
You
consideration
could build units there and
Yeah.
not affect the wells. I mean, it's not,
there. I'm just saying,
But-
we'd need to.
But if there's
consult.
ever a need, again, looking out into the future, if there's ever a need for a piece of land for whatever the purpose is, whether it be educational, for a school, or fields, or what have you, that's the only piece of dry, unencumbered land that the town owns.
Yeah.
And so,
so we're kind of saving it.
well, no, it's just something you got to think about before you,
Yeah.
before
An
you.
apartment building on
Right,
it.
before you put an apartment building on it, then it's gone forever. And then the question becomes, if the town does need land, where does it go?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
The biggest shortage in town is basically is 3-bedroom units as far as affordable is concerned, John, is that correct?
Well, I mean, I would say rental units in general, and I would say a mix of different sizes for rental units.
And rental units are the type of development that we're basically looking for because of the 100%
Well, it's two things. One is that all the units count in a housing development, so that gets us to the target of 10% much quicker. But it's also, that's where the need has been identified. The greater need.
There was a big article in the Little Sun yesterday, wasn't there, in real estate, about how more people are going towards rentals than.
Yeah, I mean, one of the problems that we've had in the rental market is that during the Great Recession, rental prices in many cases actually went up because a lot of people were forced into downsizing. And that's, to some extent still going on. And I'm sorry, I hate to point this out to you, and I'm probably the best one to do it. We do have an aging community, and a lot of people, roughly my age, are thinking about downsizing, and it's not easy to do in this town.
Right. Oh, that's good feedback.
So basically, we're looking for private developers who may want to come in, and if they have some land, and maybe build some rental units, and depending on the medium income that they choose, you can get 100% of the units.
Yeah.
For example, if you put the 48 units that are going up on Littleton Road, for example, and this is not a knock on them at all. They're within the law. It's a great development, I'm sure, whatever. But there's 44 units going up there, Evan? 44. And there's 11 of them are going to be affordable. And you might have a hard time selling those because people have to purchase those. Even at $150,000, a lot of people who are renting it can't qualify for a $150,000 mortgage.
Because the rents are too high, can't save any money.
But now if you had if there was 44 rental units there, the whole 44 would count.
Would count.
So that's why it's obviously much more better. It's a much better opportunity to get the developer coming in and wants to put rental units in different places.
Yeah, I'd also like to point out that it's not just the affordable units that have value. Those are the ones that we're focused on. Those are the ones we really want to produce. But the non-affordable units have value as well. They're more, I'll say, moderately priced units, and there's a lot of people looking for those moderately priced units in Chelmsford. Their existence actually relieves some of the pressure on the lower priced units, makes them a little bit more available. And again, in terms of just economic development issues, again, firms are finding it very difficult to hire people because of the lack of affordable housing, not just for low-income households, but also for moderate income households.
Was this helpful, John? Are you looking for any more specific feedback?
No, it sounds to me like we'll be back because as far as we're concerned, the process is the same as it would be for the 2011 plan. Whatever we do is going to have to be approved by this board and the planning board and the Department of Housing and Community Development. So it sounds like we'll keep on working on this and try to wrap it up as soon as we can and continue with the process and be back.
Yeah.
And then you can either give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
Right.
Or tell us what changes you'd like to see.
Right. I think the last comment is you've already done it, the public input sessions on multiple occasions and responding to that. I think that's a very important piece of that. That's what we heard is something that came out of the last one. So I'm very glad that you're doing that and, taking those comments into consideration before we move forward. So if you can continue that, and we'll give you the best feedback that we can as well.
Okay.
But thank you for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Great day.
Do we need to take a vote for them?
I was gonna say, won't we have a vote?
Sure.
John, do
John, do you want to vote? Would that for us to?
I always like a vote.
All right.
I like people to go on record.
Bob,
I don't trust my own memory. I didn't actually remember what happened last July 28th, 2014. So I actually looked at your minutes and saw that Selectwoman Askenberg filed a motion to approve us working on the update to the Affordable Housing. And Selectman Joyce seconded it, and you approved it unanimously. I like to be able to see, it's right there in the minutes. So yes, if you want to put something in the minutes, a vote, that'd be great.
Well, something to the effect of that he should proceed, or the committee should proceed, continue the process and
of updating
the plan. Yeah, so moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any nays
Thank
or
you very much.
abstentions? Yep, it's unanimous. Thank you, John. Have a great night.
Professor.
Yes. Next on the agenda, we have Evan Belansky here to discuss the MHC Historic Property Survey Contract Award requested.
Good evening.
Good
I
evening.
apologize for not having provided you some material prior to the meeting, as I normally would do. But working with Mass Historic Commission today, they just approved the boilerplate contract this afternoon. So just to provide you some background, in the fall town meeting of 2014, there was a CPC request that town meeting approved. It was for a total of $20,000, of which $2,000 was for historic village signs. You've seen those go up over the last week or so. And the remaining $18,000 was earmarked for a Mass Historic Commission state grant. The specifics with that state grant is that we applied for $18,000 of town money. Mass Historic was willing to match that with $9,000, so we submitted a project for a total of $27,000, proposing to use that money to hire a historic preservation consultant to do 120 historic property surveys. Those 120 properties were identified in the 2013 Historic Preservation Plan that the Historic Commission undertook. So with me tonight is Deb Taverna. She is the chair of the Historical Commission. Deb and Linda, also a member, Linda Prescott, a member of the Historical Commission, reviewed the proposals. We had 3 proposals come in. One withdrew the morning of the opening. A second one, unfortunately, was deficient in its submission. The third one, fortunately, was well ranked by the 2 members. So upon committee review, we were required to submit our recommendation as well as the consultant's response to Mass Historic Commission for their official review and approval. Mass Historic Commission did verify that that consultant was well-equipped and basically pre-qualified vendor per their standards to do the work. So the consultant that has been recommended is Gray and Pape Incorporated for a contract and not to exceed $27,000. The contract has been, as I said, reviewed and approved by Mass Historic as well as the town's procurement officer, and I believe was submitted to the town manager's office today.
Could you say that company name one more time?
Gray and Pape, P-A-P-E.
Okay, great. Not to exceed 27,000. Great. Does anyone have any questions for Evan? Okay, glad.
Is there a presentation that you would have done tonight? Could we get that?
No,
No?
but I would have, normally I would have had a letter of recommendation. So when Deb and Linda, they did prepare a letter of recommendation to Mass Historic, but there wouldn't have been any significant presentation this evening. I would have liked to have maybe had some kind of the summary as to what the $27,000 would have been used for. I did summarize that 120 historic property surveys.
Right. Okay. I mean, it seems reasonable to me. I'm glad you explained it. It seems like you only have one, essentially one vendor that worked out, but they're qualified and within the grant funding. So, I mean, I feel comfortable moving forward. Certainly don't want to hold up the process. I know it was just, basically approved by the state recently.
Right.
Does anyone have any other questions or comments for Evan?
We just signed that contract tonight.
Yeah. Okay. And with your
You have to vote on that contract? Paul?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
With your approval, then Deb would come in tomorrow. She's also required to sign on behalf of the town. We have the chair of the Selectmen would have signed, and then it goes back to Mass Historic for their signatures.
Okay.
So do you want to make the motion?
So a move. Move that we approve the contract awarded to Gray and Pope, Inc., not to exceed $27,000.
Sure. Second. All in favor? Aye. Nays or abstentions? That's unanimous.
Great, thank you. Have a
Thank
good
you,
night.
Evan. Okay, we'll move on to town manager reports now. Agenda item number 8. We have the OPEB actuarial evaluation report.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the board, since your last meeting, we received the biennial OPEB actuarial report, and so I'll present it briefly this evening. I'm not looking for any vote or any action by the board. I also made a similar presentation to the Finance Committee last Thursday evening because that's sort of how their meeting schedule fell, because they're not meeting now for a couple of weeks. And I do this in more of a question and answer type of format, and you can interrupt me at any time, but I think it just sort of helps, not so much members of the board who are somewhat familiar with the issue as a reminder, but more for people at home or watching who, don't follow it as closely as we do. So I'll just be real brief on it. What is OPEB? OPEB is the Other Post-Employment Benefits. That's the acronym. It refers to retiree benefits aside from their pension. So it's essentially a retiree health insurance benefit, although technically the town does have a minor $1,000 retiree life insurance benefit. And it's important to note that the OPEB, or the retiree health insurance benefit, not only is for the retiree, but it also is available to their spouse and or dependents. What is the OPEB liability? It's the present value of the town's share of retiree health benefits for those who are already retired and for those active employees who have a right to retire at a future date. How does one qualify for retiree health insurance? In Massachusetts, a municipal employee who works an average of 20 or more hours per week for a minimum of 10 years is eligible to retire and receive health insurance benefits as early as age 55. And in fact, for some public safety employees can actually receive it before age 55. Why is this important? Why are we spending any time on this thing? As of the 1st of 2013, the unfunded liability for the whole state, which means the state, local governments, water districts, school districts, and so forth, amounts to $46.7 billion. And that's higher than the unfunded pension liability statewide and with those governmental entities. It's also larger than the state budget. You start thinking of the size of the state budget. State budget's about $35 billion. This is a $46.7 billion liability. It's sort of the equivalent, and I thought of this the other night, and forgive me for plugging in the side. When I was watching the Republican candidates debate last week, one of the candidates, and I think it was Carly Fiorina, said, every 4 years we come here and we talk about, balancing the budget and cutting taxes and so forth, and none of these things ever happen. This is sort of and eliminating the federal deficit and so forth. This is sort of the equivalent of the state and local government side, even though we do have a constitutional provision to have a balanced budget in the state as well as for cities and towns. So I just want to put into context people why we're spending some time on this, because it is an ongoing problem and it's growing and it's not going to go away. Anyway, the whole issue of liability, of the unfunded liability, it's a function of healthcare costs. And also it's a function of the growing eligible population and the level of benefits that are offered. And obviously those who are following anything with the healthcare situation in terms of prescription drug costs and so forth, and new technologies and R&D and so forth, healthcare costs are exceeding the rate of inflation, and we also have an increasing population of retirees. And basically, without any further action, and basically there's going to be a trade-off that we're facing today, but it's going to the increased pressure in the future it'd be the question of of funding these retired health insurance benefits while adequately providing ongoing public safety, education, public works, and other public functions for the town government. And we sort of see this in a bit of a way, and you'll see after this a brief discussion on the pension. That's what we're doing today. We're paying $7 million a year towards our unfunded pension liability, and clearly we know how that's crowding out other needs for the community. So again, this is sort of the unchecked one going on right now. Again, bringing it down a little bit, the unfunded retiree health insurance, or OPEB, liability for the Commonwealth is $16.7 billion, and for that of the cities, towns, and districts, it's $30 billion. And that's because there's more employees in state, local, and government, the regional school district, water districts, fire districts, and towns. All right, let's bring it down to Chelmsford. What's our liability? Well, the report came in, and our unfunded liability as of December 31st, 2014 is essentially $93 million. This is an increase of $7.6 million from the 2 years prior. At that time, it was $85.4 million. And so that's the problem is we've been, as a community, we've been putting funding aside, but yet the liability is growing because of the increasing cost of health care as well as the revised actuarial tables for mortality because people are living longer. So what is the amount that the town has already put aside? In conjunction with this report, it was, as of December 31st, 2014, which again was the study date, it was $3.76 million. We've since put in another million plus, so right now we're closer to $4.8 million. But just, to put numbers in perspective, and our funds are invested with the State Retiree Benefits Trust Fund. And so that's the vehicle. And the restricted monies, it's a trust fund. It can't be used for any other purpose. We're required, as I mentioned earlier, to undertake evaluation every 2 years. And they're included in our audited financial statement. So in 2 weeks from now, when you've received the audit report for the fiscal year that closed on June 30th, there will be sections in there, and I imagine the auditor may cover about the town's unfunded OPEB liability as well as pension liability. And obviously, we see that when we get the ratings reports from the credit rating agencies as well. What are the funding requirements for this liability? There are none. Neither the federal nor state law requires a municipality to fund its OPEB actuarial liability, and we have no local bylaw to compel funding. We'll touch a little bit about the legislation piece shortly at the state level. Put it in perspective, well, where does this come from? Well, the town contributes 60% of the cost for a retiree's health insurance premium. And just to put a sense of what these premiums are, for a retiree under age 65, for an indemnity type plan, for a family plan, that's $26,000. We contribute 60% of that, so it's over $15,700. And for a under 65 individual indemnity type plan, it's over $10,000, and we contribute $6,000. And then for those over 65, they're required to be put into Medicare. The Medex rate right now is $3,480 per year. The town contributes just over $2,000, or almost $2,100 a year for a retiree. What are the numbers in that? Just to give people a sense of the numbers. The number of current retirees, beneficiaries, and dependents is 770. And then there are 598, or basically 600 active participants who are eligible for this benefit. So we have almost 1,370 people who can avail themselves to retiree health insurance as a result of employment with the town. Again, what has been the town's contributions to this unfunded liability? We really picked this up in fiscal year 2012. Was the first year we put almost $270,000 in. And then we sort of, our big year was fiscal year 13. We put $1.6 million in. That came from free cash. And then we sort of went on a path towards funding $1 million per year. And the last 2 years, we've put it into our operating budget. The $49,000 and the $45,000 reflect the contributions from the Sewer Enterprise Fund. So that's why we talk about $1 million, but the Enterprise Fund contributes its own because they have an actual separate schedule, which you've seen in the actuarial report. What would we need to do in terms of a funding level to pay this obligation off over a 30-year period, similar to what the pension schedule, which has 20 years remaining on? We would need to increase our annual funding today, and for essentially the next 30 years, from $1 million to $3 million.
At least.
At least. And again, that goes back to what you're expecting to have on investment rate of returns, as well as the changes. So you're talking a tremendous impact. We just don't have, as we know, when we talk about other town services such as full-day kindergarten, additional public safety and so forth, we don't have an extra $2 million just kicking around. So what happens if we just keep funding it at the $1 million level, indefinitely? Well, in 5 years, this $93 million liability will grow to $118 million. And then in 10 years, it'll be $145 million. In 20 years from now, it'll be over $200 million. And then in 30 years, the projection is over $300 million. So it's basically the compounding nature of interest and liability as costs grow over time. And that's the concern in terms of the funding level.
Can I stop you there, Paul?
Sure, yeah.
Since the last actuarial was done,
yep,
it increased by $7 million. So isn't it really a moving target, even if you put $3 million in?
That's why he said at least.
That's why it's at least. I mean, it is a moving target, but it all comes down to what are your actual returns versus your expected investment returns. as well as the ongoing increasing number of retirees, as well as the increasing cost of healthcare costs. And all those things are not breaking favorably. Right now, we're seeing healthcare costs well exceeding that of inflation. We see it every year. The premiums going up 8-9%. Even Medicare products going up, beyond the rate of inflation, despite the fact that essentially for Social Security purposes, there was no inflation and there was no adjustment to people who are receiving Social Security. So that's the problem. And again, this isn't a Chelmsford problem solely. It's a state problem. It's a national problem. It's really a world problem in terms of. But in our case, it's a question of these are benefits that have been agreed to and under mass law, and the courts have interpreted to be in essence a contract with employees. So the question becomes, well, what about reform legislation at the state level? And this, because again, this was studied. The legislature and the previous governor put together a special commission to study retiree health care. That report was released almost 3 years ago, back in January of 2013. I think the study took well over 18 months. There were a number of hearings across the state. It was promoted. A month after that report was released in January of 2013, the governor filed OPEB reform legislation. It essentially mirrored the recommendations of the commission, and it would have saved the state and cities and towns an estimated $20 billion over the next 30 years. However, only a small fraction of the savings would be realized during the first 10 years, and as you'll see, that's because you had to protect people who are on the verge of retirement from a shifting standard as they were heading towards retirement. And to date, the legislature has not enacted any OPEB reform legislation, and there's no action expected during this legislative session, which wraps up in 2 weeks, and then when they come back in January and then go till July, it's not on anybody's agenda there either. And so it's now unclear when or if this is going to be addressed at the state level. And just to give you an idea of what was in that legislation, to give people an idea of what can be done, basically it would have required a public employee to work an additional 10 years and be 5 years older in order to receive retiree health insurance benefits. So essentially for non-public safety officials, you would have had to have then basically been 60 years of age and had 20 years of service before you qualified for the benefit. And similar to pension benefits, and here was the big part of it, is you also would have been prorated benefits. Right now, if one works, let's say somebody who's an employee over at the senior center works 20 hours a week for 10 years, they receive the same benefit as somebody who worked in the highway department for 30 years full-time. But that's not how it works under the pension system. And so the proposal was why don't we mirror the retiree health insurance benefit level to that of the years of service and age. And what that was the proposal. There was 50% of the maximum benefit would have been available at 20 years, which would have been the minimum, and then it would have, much like your pension, it would have increased to a full benefit at 30 years of service. And again, they did, to protect those employees close to retirement, employees with 20 years of service and within 5 years of retirement age would be exempt from these provisions because obviously they hadn't planned for this. And also employees with 9 years of service and age 60 would be exempt. So they were trying to basically recognize the fact. The problem is every time they drew that line, the people who were just on the other side of that line would squeal, saying, well, why is it 10 years? Why isn't it 9 years? Why isn't it 11 years? So nothing got done. And also, the other reason why nothing happened was, if you looked at it, there was no immediate benefit. Again, remember, the benefit was only going to come in 10 years, and so, so you weren't getting an immediate payback. Also, there was strong opposition from the Mass Municipal Association as well as the labor unions towards this reform legislation. And the reason the Municipal Association was opposed to it was, one, they didn't like the government putting a requirement on cities and towns to fund this, because they felt cities and towns were already under a difficult financial burden with 2.5, the pension requirement, and so forth. And also, the law would have required that the town would not have been able to change the retiree benefit contribution level to retirees. And so for that reason, the MMA came out against it. In fact, the MMA was the sole dissenter from the commission report. So what can be done? Again, the only thing that we know what to do in terms of the legislative level is to contact the administration, the legislative delegation and request the enactment of meaningful OPEB reform legislation. In other words, do something. Because right now, doing nothing, as you can see, and as noted earlier, the cost inflation just keeps growing, and the hole just keeps getting deeper. And then the other question, at the local level, the only thing that we can do, because we don't have home rule autonomy, is we got to make sure to maintain and perhaps enhance our funding of the trust fund. And the last slide on this thing is, and this is the sometimes thing that's overlooked, is that no action has consequences. And sort of as I just stated, further delay to enact meaningful OPEB reform and the continued underfunding into the trust creates this increasingly growing unfunded liability that's going to constrain the town in the future, and it becomes a generational responsibility. And it's interesting because those same words of generational responsibility were used today in the Chapter 70 Education Commission report. And so this whole question of how our actions today are going to influence those who sit around this table and live and work in this town in the future. So that's in a nutshell. As I said, there's really nothing new other than our new evaluation, which we can see is clearly trending in the wrong direction. But I think the more disappointing part is it's now been 3 years since the commission completed its work, and it's not on the legislative time frame. Instead, they're going to come out in the next 2 weeks with open meeting law reform, and they're working on lifting the net metering cap. Is about the only pieces of significant local legislation that we see coming out of the legislature. And then, as you said, they're going to get into a 6-month session in January, and of course that will be consumed by the state budget, as well as a number of other issues that the state has in terms of sentencing reform, the opioid crisis, and so forth. And so, this, it's interesting because everyone sort of wanted to wait and see what the new administration would do. It's now been a year. We'll look to see, if in the year ahead that if there is some discussion amongst the legislative leadership about tackling this issue. The problem is, as I said, is the difficulty of trying to pass legislation that doesn't have an immediate payoff. And again, that's the analogy at the federal level. How do you control? This is entitlement. This is the equivalent of local entitlement. You can phrase it that way, and you see the difficulty at the federal level. The same thing when it's got that much of a sizable problem. It's hard for people to wrap their hands around it. And so, anyway, I've been babbling about this long enough. So,
assuming Obamacare stayed in place, is there any aid from that side?
No. In fact, the problem that's going to happen, and you'll see this, and allow me one moment on this, the concern that's coming in terms of the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare as you call it, is, and it goes to the level of, I talked about the premiums, it's this Cadillac tax issue, that in 2018, in 2 years, the law as it now stands is going to put a 40% excise penalty, dollar for dollar, 40%, obviously, every dollar above the premium threshold. And right now, we will be in that penalty phase. And the reason for that is the obviously increasing cost of health care, but also the fact that the index of the threshold was not, it wasn't adjusted regionally. So it's right now the biggest healthcare costs are in the Northeast, New York City, Boston, greater Boston area, and so forth, and that's what's going to make the legislation at the national level real challenging, because the Affordable Care Act sort of relies upon that excise penalty as a means of funding the program, and the only way sort of to deal with that is going to be trying to wrestle with the whole issue of the healthcare costs, and perhaps even a greater shift towards deductibles. And the only way to lower premiums is to increase deductibles, and we've already seen the pain of that, and that's going to continue. But the problem, it's just kind of, so no. The short answer is no. The bigger answer is there's that other train coming at us real fast, which is the Affordable Care Act provisions. We'll be implementing in the next couple of months the whole reporting mechanisms that have to come out in terms of the hours that people work for us, and whether or not they have health insurance. All those reporting requirements are going to be instituted not only in Chelmsford but across the Commonwealth for cities and towns as part of the reporting requirements of the law. But no, it doesn't provide any assistance to this. But you can see the big issue. This is a national issue of how does the the society deal with the increasing cost of healthcare.
Right. No, thank you, Paul.
Okay, thank
Any
you.
other questions for Paul?
Real quickly, I'll just touch upon the
One question, Paul.
Just a
Sure.
quick question.
Yeah.
We're putting this all into a general fund. What?
trust fund.
Trust
Trust
fund.
fund, yeah.
Is that dedicated just to the Chelmsford employees?
Yes.
Or, so if,
Right, it's not commingled. It's
Okay.
mingled for investment purposes, much like our retirement fund.
Mhm.
For investment purposes, it's shared and it's managed by the professionals at the state level who've had a decent record of
That's
investment.
something you opted into.
Right, the community opted into at town meeting. But no, our funds stay with us. So what happens is we have an account, our monies are tracked, but no, it's not, we're not contributing to anybody else, nor is anybody contributing to us.
thank you.
I just have one quick question. Paul, are you aware, is there any town or city that is on the path to being able to fully fund this?
Yeah, they tend to be the wealthy communities. Needham is on a 30-year schedule. Wellesley has done it. There are a few others that aren't as wealthy as Needham and Wellesley, I believe.
Weston.
No, I think Reading may be one of those communities as well.
And they're putting aside
Yeah.
$4 million a year?
Yeah, believe it or not, Wellesley, for example, and again, let's not compare ourselves. Well, they actually passed an override dedicated towards funding the liability, so they're scheduled to pay it off, and others have just taken it out of their operating budget to the point where if they have growth. I mean, they generally tend to be growth communities that would have that kind of capacity to absorb it. And unfortunately, we've, as a community, we're unlike our neighbor, Barica, which has excess capacity. We do not have any. And so that's what makes the challenge is you're not going to be able to go to the voters and say we want to do an override to fund employee and retiree health insurance. It's not going to happen in a community such as ours. But there are some communities. Then the question becomes, well, what are the contributions that communities are making? And I believe this year, for example, Westford put in like $800,000 towards their liability. You're seeing it starting to ramp up now in other communities, and really because the pressure's coming in from the credit rating agencies that look at that obligation, and then also the reporting requirements. In 2 years, when they do the audit, they will no longer be talking about a 30-year contribution level. The whole liability is going to be put into your balance sheet. And so in essence, the town would be running a negative balance sheet because of this liability when the auditors come in. And so that's where the pressure is coming from. It's coming from the credit rating agencies, much like the credit rating agencies tried to squeeze the U.S. federal government a year or so ago with the downgrade of their credit.
But you said the state is having this issue
Right.
as well.
Yeah.
And where are they? Do we know? Are they on track to?
No, they have no fixed funding schedule either. So they've not really addressed it. They tend to focus, if you saw this with the previous administration, and so far it hasn't changed, they've more focused on the pension liability, of putting additional funding into the pension liability. That was a big effort about just over a year ago. Now this year, their focus, as we saw with the snow and ice money, is in fact the legislation that Governor Baker signed today. Their big focus was putting $120 million into the state rainy day fund. So their focus has changed. A couple years ago, it was towards funding the pension liability. Now it's towards the rainy day fund, and that's because the rainy day fund is lower than it had been going into the Great Recession in 2008. And the concern is that there isn't enough of a cushion that we could withstand that type of a shock again. And so there seems to be this big push by the legislative leadership and the governor to push money into that. And in fact, that's why you saw the cuts to the UMass system. I mean, I think part of it, they were a little bit annoyed about the fees, but I think the bigger part, why they didn't give us the money for snow and ice, is the university and some others that were wanted, is that they really have felt this pressure to put money into their rainy day fund. And so I think that's where the state focus has been, and it probably will be that, because, I mean, there's let's be honest, folks, there's no talk about a revenue increase at the state level. And in fact, when they even talked about you saw what happened with this pushback they got about the MBTA. When they started talking about, well, maybe part of the solution were fare hikes. I mean, already they were, people were pushing back at them very seriously. So, let's not delude ourselves. But the problem, though, is that it's something that we're sort of passing the bill, a growing bill, to those who are coming after us. Okay.
We haven't had our legislators here in a while.
Yeah.
Maybe we should invite them in and.
Probably should, maybe we can have them come in, and, I mean, they're gonna wrap up in a couple of weeks. It might be good to have them come in like we did before they get into the next half session to hear what they see coming forward, and then what they might be able to help us
Yeah,
with.
I went to Acero's and, who's the other guy?
Tommy Golden. They had their
Tommy
office
Golden,
hours
yeah,
next door. Yeah.
And, I really get upset with those guys, because they say, oh, well, this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened. All you hear is stories, And, I was asking about, like, the snow and ice money that we were being denied. And, a couple of them said, oh, I didn't know that. Well, it's their job to know.
All right, well, why don't
I
we-
think until we get someone that represents this town as a resident in one of the seats, we get lip service, But that's just my opinion.
I'm happy. I mean, Jim Arcero is going to be on the radio this Saturday. I can ask him what he thinks a good time would be to come in, and hopefully sooner rather than later, to discuss a few of these issues. So.
I mean, Barrett's more involved with, styrofoam and, stuff like that,
I didn't mean to get this going.
Everybody's got their. Everybody's got their. It is getting a little late now. If we could move on to the pension valuation, that would be good. We can touch on OPEB again.
Yeah, this one will be relatively quick compared to that one.
Yeah, please.
Since we've received our annual audit report from Middlesex County Retirement System, much like the OPEB valuation, they're required to do their valuation every 2 years. This was the second year, so there was no dramatic shift. However, for accounting purposes and their projection, the net pension liability for the town as of December 31st, 2014 was $88.1 million, and that's assuming a discount rate of 7.875%. And that's important because the old discount rate was 8%. And so that obviously pushes up your liability when you're assuming less of an investment rate of return or a discount rate. So right now our pension liability is $88.1 million. Again, the year prior was $88.4 million. The important thing to note is that as I mentioned, it was an 8%. Now they've pushed it down to 7.85%, recognizing that the market is not giving 8% annual returns. The next valuation, this is important to note, is scheduled for the end of 2 months from now, the end of December. We'll see that data next fall as we're preparing the FY18 budget. Obviously, this year to date, the market hasn't had this type of return. There is a smoothing that's done, but the bottom line is, barring the unforeseen, given, again, the reduced investment levels, as well as they also adjust the mortality rates for the retirement system, much like the health insurance system, where again, we're seeing that liability growing.
This could start to go up, too.
Again, just to get an idea of people involved in Chelmsford, we have 415 retired participants or beneficiaries. There are 547 active participants. There are 101 participants who are non-active, non-vested, meaning they haven't worked the required 10 years. And then there are 25 non-active participants who have a right to retire. So those people will probably be coming into the system. And this is probably the most telling sign, and it sort of goes to what happened. You look over the last 10 fiscal years, and you can just see how this cost has mushroomed. If you go back 10 years ago, we were paying less than $4.4 million. Now we're at 7.1, and you can just see the rates of growth. It's not unheard of, as you can see. This past year it went up 9.44%.
What happened in 11?
In 11, the early retirement incentive went away. Remember, the state and the town, more importantly the town, adopted early retirement incentives, and then they were paid off over a 10-year period and then a 15-year period. In 2011 was I think it was the 90. It was in the 90s. There was an early retirement incentive that then put a surcharge on, and then that basically was the year the surcharge went away. That we're right now we have 4 years remaining on the last the early retirement incentive that the town offered back in 2002, and that will go away, and that's roughly about $80,000 a year. And also what they do is they do a smoothing mechanism, so they don't realize returns. They recognize any returns from market can project it over a 5-year period, and so that way you don't get the dips and spikes like when you had the recession when the whole market crashed, it also affects you in a healthy market. So there's the keys. You can see that, if we're bound by Proposition 2.5, when we're seeking 9%, 6%, and again, real dollars, $600,000 increases in the pension, and we mentioned the next increase is like $450,000 for FY, the budget we're preparing and be submitting in the spring. And I mentioned about the smoothing over a 5-year period. Again, this is going to be paid off in 20 years. The maximum you can go out is 2037. Middlesex is on a path to 2035. Just to give you some perspective on that, when the legislature adopted pension reform in 1988, it was scheduled to be paid off in 30 years, and that was supposed to be 2018. And then what happened was there were a series of economic challenges for the state, and they kept pushing the schedules out. And so the sad part is we're still 20 years away from the current schedule, and we're left in 50% funding towards the retirement assessment. And obviously, you didn't start at zero back in '88. So what's happened is you've had the same thing, sort of like the healthcare. You've had the increasing growth of retirees and the obligations, despite the fact that we're now, almost 30 years into pension reform. So again, we anticipate seeing these. So to wrap it up in one final slide, if you look at our current OPEB and pension actuarial liability, it's $181 million. To put it in perspective, our current operating budget is $120 million. We currently have an OPEB appropriation of $1 million a year and a pension assessment of $7.1 million a year. So it's it's something that be mindful of, and like I said, the one that's unchecked right now is the OPEB one, because again, there is no funding requirement, and it hasn't been any reform legislation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Thank you, much appreciated. Why don't we move right along to town manager bid awards for the lease of the Swain Road landfill site for the development of a solar photovoltaic facility.
Thank you. We Kathleen and Gary are here. Kathleen Canavan, Gary Prescatti are here. They're here to provide the proposals list. It's been reviewed by the Energy Conservation Commission, and I'll turn it over to Kathleen.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Selectmen. Hello again. I'm the town-appointed employee on the Energy Committee. On October 13th, we reviewed the proposals for the municipal property, the development of Swain Road landfill for community shared solar. First, we reviewed the qualifications, and then secondly, we opened the sealed bids. The qualifications, did everybody get the handout? Did Michelle give a handout to you, Paul, in advance, by chance?
They
No.
have the bid.
Yeah,
summaries.
just the bid review?
I had sent Tricia the summary scores, but I didn't see it in the packet.
Okay, well, I apologize, so what I'll do is just run through it very quickly. First, the non-price proposal, it was, we received 3 bids, and we received them from Sun Edison, Citizens Enterprise, and Solar City and Blue Wave. That, the third one, Solar City and Blue Wave, is one corporation. And the non-price proposal, it was ranked the highest, Solar City and Blue Wave. And based on that, they had a lot of experience working with capped landfills and brown sites. Currently, they're doing 13 megawatts of solar compared to the other ones. They had a lot more experience. Secondly, their schedule, they were aware of the fact that the current federal investment tax credits end January 1st, 2017. So we really have to do this landfill next year, the solar on it. And thirdly, perhaps most importantly, is that they were really experienced with community development, getting everybody involved in solar. Solar City also did a lot of the solar projects in town, so they had a database of residences who would do it. Also, their site plan, when you looked at all 3 plans of the proposal, their site plan, they were well aware of all the wetlands and the setbacks. So they got the highest score. We selected them, and then when we opened up the sealed bids, their pricing was most favorable. It was $35,000. The town would get revenue for the solar.
Is that per year?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
We'd also get some minor tax revenue on the equipment out there as well.
right?
Are they making a deal with the Scotty Hall? I mean, I know that's up there.
We've notified Scholar Hollow of the bids that were received, and upon the reward, we'll notify the vendor. And the reason that might be a benefit to Scotty Hollow is that might be an alternative route for them to pull the electricity off of the site to the three-phase power grid of National Grid. So yeah, we've been communicating with them.
Now, Paul,
Yeah.
can I just ask a question? The energy that they generate out there, it goes into the grid? It
Yes.
doesn't get reassigned to like neighbors and stuff, right?
Well, there is discussion of a community solar, and that's.
It's
and Kathleen can
community
speak to that.
solar,
Community solar.
and this is something relatively new, a lot of companies haven't done. So they're going to offer it to the residences as well as some of the small businesses,
So that's how they could acquire that.
just to
power.
defer their electrical costs.
But otherwise, is there income coming in besides the 35,000?
No.
No. They pay 35.
They pay
and get all the
35,
money.
and, yep, and they're responsible for the maintenance and care of the site.
Right. Okay.
What kind of tax credits do they get, Paul? Percentage-wise, I mean, is it big?
They were 16,000 the first year, the tax credits. Yeah,
What percentage of that their investment would that be, roughly?
I don't know that.
I don't know.
I'm just curious.
Yeah, good question. Mhm.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I have no other questions. I'd entertain a motion to approve the bid award.
I move that we approve the bid award. It's for Solar City and Blue Wave, is that what it is?
Yes.
Yep. Blue Wave Capital and Solar City.
Okay. And in the amount of $35,000
Correct,
Correct.
annual lease revenue.
annual fee to us.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nays or abstentions? That's unanimous. Thank you very much.
Thank
Just
you
while
very
Kathleen's
much.
there, just to give the board a heads up, at your next meeting, we are expecting the bid results on Wednesday for the energy aggregation, which is the sale of electricity power supply to residents. They've had the preliminary, pre-bid conference has been very favorable, and we'll know on Wednesday, and as soon as we get word, we'll pass the word out to you on Wednesday and then discuss it formally at the next meeting. But so far, if things break right, we may be able to offer that power as early as February to the residents as energy supply, electricity supply. So far, that's coming together, and I believe, not to keep picking on Westford, but I think of that, but I believe Westford is about a month or so behind us. They think they're getting bids, because I'm told that
I think
that you're working on it, right?
Yeah, I think they're going to be trying to get the bids in sometime within the next 2 weeks as
Yeah,
well.
exactly.
If you
right
need some
around the
help,
same
just
time.
go to
Right.
Paul. and-
No, in fact, the reason I mentioned it is I had a discussion with the Westford town manager last week.
Yeah.
Don't forget, he's got something more important to worry about for the last.
No, but it's
I know her and John are going to be going
Right,
down
they're
to the
going-
bid opening.
Exactly, so there's a bit, so it's coming real fast, so I just wanted to remind the
See
board.
something in the Lowell Sun, either yesterday or today.
Mhm.
There was information about that aggregation.
Yeah, and Lowell's done really well under the program, and like I said, we'll be next in. Like I said, the Westford bid is a week or so behind us, so it'd be interesting to see. Oh, just so you know, because it looks like, well, it'll be for a 1 to 3 year period for supply, and the expectation is it'll probably be a 24-month period of supply. But just to give you an idea, because that's the next question, is what's the price and then for how long? And we anticipate it will be a year-round rate. In other words, you know how right now, National Grid, they have a summer rate and a winter rate. Typically, in these irrigation things, they generally go with a annual rate. So again, we'll give you all the details, but I just want to let people know this is coming, and we'll have more details when things open on Wednesday. But I know it's a big effort, and obviously, while the board's here, we'll just take another moment. We're also in a bit of transition. Our energy manager, Michelle, as I sent to the board, and obviously they know, she's getting married in the next several weeks.
going
She's
on
also
around here?
she's also relocating to California,
They're
so
young.
Chelmsford
so we'll be out looking for a new energy manager.
Yeah.
Now, wasn't that with
That was a state grant,
outside funding?
right?
There was 50%
50% this year,
this year.
right?
Second
Yeah.
year.
Do we need to
Second
fill
year.
it?
And next year, it's going to be all on us,
Right.
right?
Right.
Right. Be
Do
the
we need to
budget.
fill it, Paul?
Yeah, we do, because there's a lot of work. I think
We really do.
it's a tremendous effort, and I know Mike Rigney was here, but they've also been working closely with the schools on some issues over there as well. And as Kathleen knows, anytime you're entering into the heating system and season, also we've our own solar panels are running, and we're now in the process of getting those bills and revenue in from the Housing Authority in the town of Tewksbury. So there's been a lot going on.
Yeah, there's the whole measurement and verification
Right.
that's going to start taking place with the ESCO. So the energy manager really does do a lot of work.
Yeah.
It's an important role.
Okay,
Thank you.
Just a quick question. So
Sure.
this, the Blue Wave contract, is that 20-year?
Yes.
Is that 20-year lease? Okay.
Yes.
Great.
Thank
Well,
you.
Thank you.
thank you very much. Why don't we move on to appointments? There's a handful of appointments.
Yeah, I'll go real quick. For 101 Mill Road Committee, Sarah Pereira, 1 year unexpired term. Do you want to do them all in bulk, or do you want?
Yeah, we can-
Okay.
I'd like to.
Council on Aging, Martha Sperry, unexpired 1 year term. Sue Jefferson to the Cultural Council for a 3-year term. Joe DeSalle to the Energy Conservation Commission for an unexpired 3-year term, ending in June of 2017. Holiday Decorating Committee, Danielle and Ryan Burns and John Floria, which would be a year from this end of December. In the North Road Implementation Advisory Committee, Janet Murphy is seeking to fill the 1 year unexpired term on 6/30/2016, and this will help fill up some of her time shortly as well. So
Should be retiring, too.
we
I
should be
move
retiring.
we approve all the appointments to the committees by Paul, as presented.
And I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nays or abstentions? That's unanimous. Great,
Thank you.
We have regular meeting minutes of September 14th, 2015. Any questions or comments on the minutes? Let me just pull it out here.
Just one sec.
Yep, and I'll entertain a motion.
Move that we approve the regular meeting minutes of September 14th, 2015.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Nays or abstentions? They're unanimous as well. All right, we are on to Selectmen Liaison Reports and Referrals. Anything tonight?
No tonight.
Anything tonight, Bob?
Yeah, my favorite bank down the street.
Oh, I thought you were going to thank me for getting that street light fixed.
Yeah.
I have two thank yous.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Algonquin Lane, Algonquin Road, light is on after a year and a half.
Yeah,
thank
it's
God.
fixed, finally.
And the man on
out there today?
Muriel,
Fire.
the man on Muriel Road,
Yeah.
who thought he was going to blow up from a gas leak,
Yeah.
he saw them out there,
Yeah.
and they've
Got
fixed
that done.
that. So kudos.
Yeah, and you saw we did try to get the bank light fixed too, right?
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I sent you the email message on that.
Oh, okay, I
It's
missed
the
it.
bank's responsibility, and they promised us they'd go out there and tend to the light.
You know what I'm wondering? I hear rumors that the bank is not going to renew their lease.
They're not, we were told that.
Yeah. Would there be a way that we could take over those lights? Like wire our last light into that light and that light? And then have.
That was part of the planning board's approval back then.
Right.
But that means we take on the cost of lighting it and
Two
repairing
lights
it.
and it's LEDs, so. It's just something to think
All right.
about, you know.
I didn't think about
And
it.
even if we needed to relocate them, you know, out closer to the street, because they're in on the grass more, it's just something to
I
think
think the
about.
question is maybe the wiring of those lights, because my sense is those lights, since they're owned by the bank and maintained by the
Yeah.
bank, the wiring goes into the bank.
Yeah, well,
Whereas
I'm
the others
thinking.
are on our own time or
I'm
in
thinking
meter.
you cut the
Yeah.
wire from the bank,
Yeah.
and then you run wires from the existing lights.
Do you want to incur, you want the town to incur that
No,
expense?
it's not gonna be that
Well,
much
he'll
money.
volunteer.
I'll ask.
Wait a minute.
I'll ask.
Don't we have an electrician on staff?
Yeah, but I mean, it still costs time and materials, but
Oh.
I'll find out.
I just think it's a good thing to do. We don't know how long that building will be empty. And yes, thank you for
Okay.
Algonquin.
Great, thank you, Bob. Selectman Askenberg, do you have anything?
No, I don't have any liaison reports. I do want to thank Paul for coming to the Chelmsford Republican Town Committee meeting and giving kind of a brief overview of not only the town meeting warrant articles, but I think what was really beneficial was just all the OPEB information and how much cost the town incurs. And I got a lot of positive feedback from that, from the members. And, you know, and understanding more the town and the struggles we have with funding.
Oh, good.
You know, our budget. So thank you, Paul. And, you know, I was even thinking, you know, I don't know if you go to Rotary and other places. It
Aren't
just
you
seems
the-
like it.
He's the
Aren't you
president.
the chairman?
I'm president-elect, yeah.
Okay, do
President-elect.
you cover the warrant articles during a?
No.
No? I just think the more that you can do that, and I know you have your Chelmsford Telemedia Show.
Yeah.
But maybe the more that you can do that, the more beneficial.
If I
Just
only-
residents to get more involved and understand that.
I only knew somebody in the Democratic Town Committee.
Not your cousin.
Your cousin, I love it.
He runs the joint.
Well,
Okay,
yeah,
that was
thank
it.
you, Paul. Thank you, Janet.
I don't have anything other than my street light only took a couple weeks to get.
All right, so it's on me. I get married, so that means I can go back to my, thank you.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
That means I can go back to my office hours now. I'm done with my
Sure?
honeymoon,
You sure?
so. Mission.
You probably have more office hours now.
Yeah.
So I'll be there.
Every day till 10.
I'm allowed out of the house on Thursday from 5 to 6. It was a condition of the marriage contract. I'll be at Panera Bread. If anyone has any issues they'd like to discuss.
This is Teresa, is that what she likes to be called?
Yeah, Teresa.
Teresa, not Terry.
You can call her Mrs. Hanson now.
Ah!
I think she'd probably prefer Teresa.
I love it.
All right, are there no press questions this evening? Next regular meeting is November 16th, 2015. Is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Good evening, everyone. Thank you.